So in this class, we will be taking forward our discussion regarding the spectral density, energy spectral density, power spectral density, whatever we have discussed in the last couple of classes. However, after the last class, I realized that I should have been uh, refreshing or revising some concepts related to time series before. So in this lecture today, I'm going to briefly revise some concepts which you have already learned in the beginning of this course. But I will briefly so that you get an idea what we are discussing and so that you understand the context what we are discussing. So I will briefly discuss those concepts about the stationary time series what we have already learned in the beginning of this class by Professor Udit Bhatia. So what do we mean by stationarity in general? So a time series xt, so xt we are writing any time series inside, we are representing it inside the curly brackets where x is the measurable quantity and t represents the time. So we are measuring each x value, like for example x1, x2, x3 up to xk at each instant of time t1, t2, t3 and tk. So we call this process as strictly stationary, as you can see that when the entire distribution of those random variables at different instants of time doesn't change with the time. So if we are having a particular value of the probability distribution function, for example at time t equal to t1, it remains the same or it does not change at t plus h or at t1 plus 2h or t plus 3h, something like this. So as you can see here, we are writing a distribution function that the probability on the left hand side, as you can see, the probability that a random variable x at t1 will take up to values x1 is equal to the probability at t1 plus h that it will take values up to x1. So the entire distribution along the time series does not changes with time. So then if we have a time series like this, we say that it is a strictly stationary time series. However, in reality this does not happen. We mostly work with weakly stationary or weak sense stationary or what we call wide sense stationary. So we will see this in the couple of classes. So these are just some brief revisions what you have already done. So the mean and autocovariance and variance, like how we define the distribution of a random variable. So xt is a random variable because at t there can be many infinite number of realization of particular measurement. So the probability that time series or that measurement will take values up to x at that instant of time is represented by the distribution function, or we sometimes also call it probability distribution function, that the probability that it will take values up to x. This small x can be any number where xt is the random variable. So then the density function is represented by the differentiation of the distribution or cumulative distribution function, which essentially tells us the probability of the probability that the random variable will take values in a small dx range, in a range between x1 or x2, you can take it like this. So similarly, the mean is defined as expectation of at any instant of time. We define mean, which is represented by mu xt at mu subscript is x for that time series x at any instant of time t is expectation of xt, that is expectation of all realization at this point of time, is like the integrating x ft x dx. So ft x dx is ftx is your probability density function or simply density function. So this is, I think you already have a background from random variable and we have discussed it multiple times, whether it is in this class or if people from earth sciences, I have discussed in engineering seismology courses also. So E denotes here the what we call the expectation operator. So this expectation operator is defined like this. So mean is defined like this. Autocovariance function. Autocovariance is essentially telling that how your measurements or how the properties of x at different time instances are varying with respect to each other. So that is physically. So gamma x, where gamma is, I'm writing as the covariance at any instant of time s and t. So this is written as cov x, s and xt. So capital X is the values of all x's at time s, xt is the values of all x's at time t, because we will have infinite number of realization. We will not have a single time series in case of a stationary time series. So this is written as exponential of not exponential, this is expectation of xs minus the mean mu s into multiplied by xt minus mu t, the corresponding means, and then how we represent it, that is how the covariance function is represented. And if so, these are at two different time instances. If s and t are equal, so if you are representing, you are taking at the this covariance function at the same time instance, so it will essentially become, because then mu will be the same, mu t and mu s and mu t will be the same, so it will essentially become the expectation of your variance, what we call the total variance of the signal. So autocovariance at the same point is essentially the total variance. And autocorrelation function is that when we divide this autocovariance function by the total variance, what we get is the autocorrelation function. So autocorrelation function measures the linear relationship, as I said before, or predictability of the series at time t, say xt, using only the values of x. So if you know the value before time t, or you know the values at t and you want to predict at time s, so you can use this relationship. So the value of autocorrelation function range between -1 to 1. So this we already know. So the autocovariance function of a stationary time series is written like this, as I have already said. So at x covariance at x t plus h, so we are taking a time xt, x at t, and then at t plus h at different time step. So that is written as you can see here, expectation of xt plus h minus mu xt minus mu. So these are means at those different time instances. We are writing mu because we are saying that the mean is same at each time instance. So the autocorrelation function will be written as, so h is essentially the time difference, so that is s minus t, as we used s and t in the previous case. So you can see h as s minus t. So gamma h divided by gamma 0, when h equal to 0, s and t will essentially be the same, so it will be the variance. So a weak stationary time series, so how do we represent, or which time series is called a weak stationary time series, is a finite variance process. So the variance of the process, or the variance of the time series, is finite, and it is weak stationary when the mean value function mu t is constant and it does not depend upon time. And similarly, the autocovariance function gamma s t depends on s and t only through their difference. So only it depends upon the time difference, not the values of x at instances time at t and s. Henceforth, we will use the term stationary to mean weakly stationary. So whenever we will talk stationary, that means we are talking about weakly stationary time series or weakly stationary processes. Now the question, so this was a small background needed for the discussion which we discussed already in the last class, and which we will discuss again in this class, so that this concept of spectral density becomes clear to you, that why we really need spectral densities, or why we need spectral estimation techniques or spectral analysis. So this is sort of a theoretical background and also a foundation upon which you can build upon many large concepts. So because this is very important if you are really working in time series analysis now. So this is just an example. On the right side, as you can see, this is Southern Oscillation Index associated somewhere measured in the Central Pacific, and the below panel is telling you, or is showing you, associated recruitment. I think this is a terminology used in fisheries, so that means number of new fish generated So this is a function of time. So I think this is for something like 40 years data here. So this SOI, Southern Oscillation Index, measures the changes in air pressure related to sea surface temperature in the Central Pacific Ocean, and at the same time they have measured the population of new number of fishes that are being produced in the sea. Because this is important and this is interesting, because many of you are aware with this terminology that the Central Pacific warms every 3 to 7 years, so it has a periodicity of every 3 to 7 years due to the El Nino effect. And as you can see, both the series represent a sort of cyclic behavior or sort of regular repetitive behavior, as we have discussed that certain pattern is being repeated after a certain time interval. So this periodic behavior is of importance, as I have said many times in my classes, because we want to understand those periodic behaviors. Once we understand to which frequency or what is the period of those behaviors, then we can try to understand the underlying physical process which is generating this periodic behavior. So to understand basically the idea that why we want to go to the spectral analysis, that we want to understand that how much this periodic behavior or this regular pattern what you see here in terms of this pressure as well as in the new number of fishes generated in the sea, this is related to a particular generating process, and how much it is contributing in the total strength of your time series, what we represent by energy or power, as I had discussed in the last class. So that is what we are interested in, because that is, after knowing that, then we can understand those underlying process which is generating this effect. So the idea behind representing a time series in frequency domain, as I said, that is, we want to decompose a stationary time series xt into a linear combination. This is important, and into a linear combination of sines and cosine functions with random coefficients. So you saw in the Fourier series we have written a periodic function in terms of sines and cosine, summation of sines and cosine, where there were coefficients an and bn, and those coefficients are determined from the function itself. So just as we do it in the case of deterministic functions, so we refer to this as a spectral analysis. The entire analysis is referred as a spectral analysis in the frequency domain. You can imagine frequency domain representation as a regression. So when we determine those an and bn coefficients associated with the cos and sine term, if you remember those Fourier series terms, you can simply see them also as a regression exercise, that ft or fx on the left hand side is given, then you have to determine a0 plus summation n equal to 1 to infinity an cos nx plus bn integration, summation over n equal to 1 to infinity bn is outside, so sin nx. So your basis functions are cos and sine, cos nx and sin nx. These values you will know. The only thing you have to determine is an and bn. So many people see Fourier series coefficients determination as a regression problem also, because ft is a given function or a given series to you or given data to you. So we come to the cyclic behavior and periodicity. Why we want to understand now the spectral density and all these things, which I discussed more theoretical from a theoretical perspective in the last class. So here I want to make it slightly simpler. So for example, you know this xt is a cyclic deterministic function, a nice one, a cos 2 pi omega t. So just to introduce you this, a is the amplitude, cos 2 pi omega t plus phi, where phi is the phase, t is the time, and omega what we call is the angular frequency. A represents the amplitude of this. So you can easily plot this this time series or this function. So in terms of, because we are discussing about a stationary time series, we are discussing about random processes, so we can also make it random. Actually, we can make a as a random, that a is being sampled from a randomly distribution, and phi is also being sampled from a another random distribution. So we can entirely make this xt as a random process. So, but we have the assumption is that a and phi are coming from independent distribution. So they are essentially independent random variables with some distribution. That distribution can be discussed later, or we can decide it, but so just assume that a and phi are random distribution. So I can write using this function here, this identity not function, this identity, you know, cos a plus b is equal to cos a cos b minus sin a sin b, or if it is minus then it becomes plus. So this is a typical identity, if you remember, of sine and cosines. So this xt I can write, so xt a cos 2 pi omega t plus phi, I can write u1 cos 2 pi omega t plus u2 sin 2 pi omega t, where u1 is nothing but a cos phi and u2 is minus a sin phi. A will be written as square root of u1 square plus u2 square. This is easy. And phi I'm sorry, this phase can be represented as tan inverse of minus u2 divided by u1. So this function we have here. So u1 and u2, as I said, that a and phi are random variables coming from their respective independent distributions. So I can write this entire thing u1 cos 2 pi omega t plus u2 sin 2 pi omega t, as we have seen, where u1 and u2 are given like this as a cos phi and minus a sin phi. So to make this calculation slightly simpler, what I can do is that cos 2 pi omega t I can write as ct, and sin 2 pi omega t I can write as t. So then I can try to write the covariance function of this time series. So this is a random time series now, because u1 is a random variable, u2 is also a random variable with zero mean and variances sigma square. So xt will be a stationary process with zero mean, also random, and it is also a random variable. So I can write the covariance function gamma x, you can write it rx also, as I was discussing in the last class, but let's not get into the notations. So gamma x is your covariance function, which is a function of only h, that is s minus t. So covariance x t plus h at another instant of time t plus h, and xt, that how they covary. So if we write covariance function of this you have already done such an exercise. So u1 ct plus h, because t was coming only in 2 pi omega t terms, in a cos phi and a sin phi you don't see any t term, plus u2 st plus h comma u1 ct plus u2 st. So at the instant of time, so just we are changing the time, t plus h and t and t. So covariance, then we will compute the covariance of u1 ct plus h with u1 ct plus covariance of u1 ct plus h u2 st. So since we said, so you can multiply and write these terms like this, you can essentially expand this. So from this expansion what we see, so as we said that u1 and u2 are independent and uncorrelated random variables, so the covariance between u1 and u2 will always be 0, right? So this covariance, the first term will essentially be the first term will be here nothing but covariance of u1 ct plus h into covariance of u1 ct plus h and u1 ct. So the covariance of u1 with u1 will be essentially your sigma square, because their variances was sigma square. Then ct plus h and ct. Covariance of u1 and u2 will be 0, because they are independent random variables, uncorrelated random variables. Again u2 and u1 will be 0. u2 and u2 again will be sigma square st plus h st. So it will be sigma square will be common, ct plus h into ct. I forgot to write one more step. So sigma square you will take common, so it will be sigma square bracket ct plus h ct plus st plus h st. ct and st we know, cos 2 pi omega t and sin 2 pi omega t, and if we apply again this cosine identity, what we will get, sigma square cos 2 pi omega h. And variance of xt will be, when we put in this covariance autocovariance function h equal to 0, you see that it will be cos 2 pi omega h will become 0, so it will be the variance of the total time series. So variance of xt will be, the variance of u1 and u2, that is total sigma square. So general case, because this was for one realization. So in case of general cases, like we can generalize this over the total ensemble. So we can write it UK1 cos 2 pi omega t plus UK2 sin omega sin 2 pi omega t, where k is going from 1 to q, and this the entire thing we can simply write as we have written here, sigma square k cos 2 pi omega h, where summation k is going from 1 to q, and this this gamma x h is your autocovariance function. So the idea is essentially that this equation shows that we can represent gamma h, your autocovariance function, in terms of a Fourier series, what we were talking in terms of Fourier transform there. In case of discrete data points, it is essentially a Fourier series, because we don't work with the analytical functions in case of discrete data. The concept is of Fourier transform, but what we essentially represent it in terms of a series, like in terms of summations. So with real data, we consider it as a series, but theoretically it is not a series, theoretically it is a transform. So the coefficients are the variances. The important thing is that those coefficients, what we were talking in the last class, that these coefficients are representing the contribution of different frequency component present in the time series in the total, because you can see here sigma k. So this k is representing the contribution of kth frequency in the total variance of the data. So your gamma x is representing simply energy density in this case. I am not calling it power spectral density, because it is power spectral density is when it is divided by the total time interval, but this is for analytical function. So in case of real data, in case of discrete data, when we have data at different points, these are simply series. So here we can talk about energy spectral density, or you can use just a spectral density, but there is not a much difference, because power spectral density is just normalized by total variance. Then you call it power spectral density, that we have seen in the last class. So the spectral density is a continuous analog of this summation over of this summation over 1 to q, and it is represented by integration. So as I said, theoretically it is represented by an integration, but in general, as we will see in case of how we do spectral estimation, that it is essentially a series, because in your computer we don't solve directly for those analytical functions. We have a data at t1 we have certain value x1, at t2 we have a certain value x2, at t3 we have a different value x4, so forth and so on. So what we do is essentially discrete Fourier transform. We don't do the analytical Fourier transform, which we have Fourier integral, which we have seen in the last class, but that was important to make a theoretical background. So what we will do in the next, after the next lecture, will be the discrete Fourier transform, and then how we do it in reality, that we will do, and then we will go to the concept of periodogram. But in the next class, I would like to discuss first some examples of spectral density. So maybe some properties of spectral density we are going to discuss. If we want to write spectral density is like it should exist, so it should be finite. As I discussed, this is the important condition that your for spectral density to exist, the important condition is that your autocovariance function should be integrable, or your autocovariance function should exist. So this summation should exist essentially. This summation from minus infinity to infinity should exist. If that exists, then we can write the Fourier transform, or the spectral density f omega of the autocovariance function as a Fourier transform of the autocovariance function. So f omega represents your spectral density, which is nothing but a Fourier transform, or you can call here Fourier series representation of autocovariance function. So these are the properties of spectral density. F omega summation h equal to minus infinity to infinity gamma h e to the power minus 2 pi omega h, that it is always greater than 0 or equal to 0, and it is an even function. F of omega is equal to f minus omega. I hope you can prove this. F of omega is equal to f of minus omega, and gamma equal to 0. The spectral density represents the total, the summation over the spectral density. The spectral density in fact represents the variance of the total signal. In the next class we will discuss the spectral density for some processes, for some known processes, for like moving average or the autoregressive processes, something like this, that how the spectral density function looks like and how we compute this for these processes.